How's it going, folks? I'm Des with DesFit, and this is the Fitbit Charge 4 activity tracker, which updates the popular Fitbit Charge 3 with built-in GPS, so you'll be able to leave your phone at home and still be able to track your outdoor activities. If you're new to the channel, first of all, welcome, but the review you're about to see is going to be pretty in-depth, where I go into a lot of detail, where I test the Charge 4 for running, both outdoors and indoors, mountain biking, as well as road biking, as well as some gym-based activities like weight training, high-intensity interval training, as well as swimming, just so you can get a better idea if it's going to work for you. So if you like content like this, make sure to subscribe, and also don't be shy about hitting that like button down below if you found this video useful. It's a small little thing that you can do that helps the channel out a lot, and I appreciate it. With the addition of GPS built in right in the Charge 4, it's going to be great for those of you who would rather not have to bring their phone with you while working out outdoors. But other than that, the Charge 4 is going to be extremely similar to the Charge 3, sharing nearly the exact same look and feel, and it's going to be a nice, small, attractive, and lightweight device. You'll use a touchscreen along with a haptic feedback button on the side to navigate around the device, and the touchscreen is quite predictable, especially for a device this small. The display is bright and crispy indoors, but it can be challenging to read outdoors, mainly due to how glossy that display is, and that's with or without sunglasses. And the sunnier it is, the more challenging it's going to be to see. Now, before we get into the activity and workout tracking, let's go over what the Charge 4 offers in terms of the smartwatch type experience interacting with your phone. With the built-in apps on the first screen, you'll have an exercise app, and we'll check this out in a lot more detail in just a bit when we go over all the workouts. And then below that, there's going to be a Spotify app. What this app will do is control any Spotify music that's playing on another device. And that's not only your phone, but any other device that's set up with Spotify Connect. But that's kind of it. It just controls music that's playing on another device. And you can't load music onto the Charge 4 itself. And that makes sense since you can't pair headphones with the Charge 4 anyways. Then there's going to be an agenda app, a relax app, which has options for a 2-minute or 5-minute session to help you relax. There are timers, including a stopwatch and countdown timers. You can set up numerous alarms. There's weather information that pulls from your phone, and you can set up multiple weather locations in the Fitbit app. And then there's going to be settings. In the settings, you can adjust the brightness level between normal, automatic based on light conditions, and then dim. You can switch between normal and strong vibrations. You can turn on or off the wrist-based heart rate, a do not disturb function, as well as a sleep mode. You can enable or disable active zone minute notifications. You can set the screen timeout from long, default, and medium, but just note that even with the long setting, it's only about 6 seconds long, which I think is a little bit short. Then you can adjust the GPS settings between dynamic, which automatically switches between the built-in GPS and the connected GPS with your phone, or only using the built-in GPS, or to only use your phone's GPS. And we'll see how well all these work here in just a bit. And then you can turn on or off GLONASS, which what this is an additional satellite system that can potentially get you better GPS results. There's a low power GPS mode, which is intended to save battery life. You can reset all of those GPS settings to default if you'd like, and then there's going to be a simple about page. In terms of notifications, you'll be able to receive notifications for calls, text messages, and calendar events. And then you can also enable and disable notifications from certain apps on an app-by-app basis. On an iPhone, these will be one-way notifications, and you won't be able to reply or anything like that. But when paired to an Android phone, you'll be able to reply with predefined responses that you can set up in the Fitbit app. When it comes to daily activity tracking, the Charge 4 will track your steps, your hourly activity, active zone minutes, heart rate, distance, calories burned, floors climbed, sleep, and then you can even log your weight as well as how much water you drank in the Fitbit app, and both of those will display here, as well as the number of days you've exercised in the last 5 days. Fitbits are a bit notorious for over-reporting how many steps you've actually taken, and the Charge 4 is not really going to be any different. So for instance, I just got back from a bike ride and it was basically reporting that I was taking steps the entire time. However, sleep tracking is probably one of the best and most accurate features on a Fitbit device, and the Charge 4 does a great job in this department. It will give you a sleep score along with the time that you slept. You'll be able to view your sleep stages, including the time spent awake in REM, light sleep, as well as deep sleep. You'll be able to dive into this chart and see a breakdown of all the stages and what they all mean. You'll then be able to see a 30-day average as well as a benchmark for people within your gender identification as well as your age. You'll also be able to see your estimated oxygen variation, and then if you subscribe to Fitbit Premium, you'll be able to view your sleeping heart rate and restlessness throughout the night. All right, so with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this review, and that's going to be how the Charge 4 performs in the fitness capacity. For workout profiles, the Charge 4 has 21 profiles to choose from. However, you can only have 6 profiles available on the device at one given time. You'll choose which profiles these are in the Fitbit app, and then here's a complete list of all the workout profiles at this time. In addition to the built-in sport profiles, the Charge 4 also has automatic workout detection, and we'll get into if those actually work after we go over some of these sport profiles. And we're going to first start with running. On this run here, the total distance was pretty much identical to two other test devices, resulting in very close similar average pace. The map is kind of neat, where you can see your heart rate zones over the duration of the activity and a breakdown of minutes in each zone. And then you can also see the same sort of thing for your speed during the activity as well as mile markers. Taking a look at heart rate, it did okay for the first 2/3 of the run, but then tracked low for the remainder of the run. On this next run, the total distance also lined up pretty close to two other test devices, and for heart rate, it was about 10 beats per minute low for the average heart rate, and you can see from the chart that it was tracking low for most of the duration of the run. And although the total distance was in line, if we take a closer look at the GPS tracks, we can see here at the end where it was cutting corners quite a bit, and then there's one spot right here where it lost GPS momentarily, but it did recover. And then while we're on the subject of running, let's also talk about how well the Charge 4 did in terms of estimating running distances on a treadmill. On this run here, it was about a half mile shy of the 4 miles that was logged on the treadmill. So out of curiosity, I went ahead and tested it again, and it came up with nearly the exact same result. So now onto some cycling, and we're first going to start with road biking. On this ride here, the total distance lined up just fine with other test devices. Good to go there. If we take a look at the GPS tracks in more detail, for the most part, it looks pretty good. However, if we look at the bottom of the map where there are some curves and turns, we see the same sort of thing where we saw with running, where there's going to be that corner cutting. For the heart rate on this ride, it's not exactly what I would call stellar by any means, and we can see some dips and spikes throughout the ride. On this ride here, the distance was calculated a smidge high, but nothing crazy. Taking a look at the GPS tracks, it appears very solid, although this ride was pretty much straight lines, but for the few curves that were there, it cut the corners like we saw before. If we take a look at the heart rate, it started out somewhat okay for the first 30 minutes, then started to fluctuate. This was a higher intensity ride, but what you'll notice is that I was trying to maintain a steady heart rate throughout, and even without many rapid rises and falls in heart rate, it was kind of deciding to do its own thing. And just to note, this is going to be the heart rate from another device that I was testing on the exact same ride, and although it's not perfect, it's going to be much closer to the other external heart rate monitors. So that previous ride was a higher intensity ride, and here's going to be an example of something lower intensity, and although it had some issues in some spots, the heart rate tracked a bit closer. So on this ride here, the distance was pretty close, although it was about a half mile high, but the elevation was pretty comparable with the other test devices. However, if you notice the title of this ride was through a fairly narrow canyon, so it would be a more challenging test for GPS, and if we zoom in on these GPS tracks, it lost GPS in a couple spots on the canyon. So now onto some mountain biking. On this first ride, distance was pretty close to the other test devices, and elevation was pretty close as well. Good stuff there. When we take a closer look at the GPS tracks, not all that bad, although we see some of that corner cutting. However, notice this little section right here where it lost GPS for about 10 to 15 seconds, but at least it recovered. But what I was surprised by was the heart rate, especially seeing the heart rate from the road cycling. So mountain biking can pose some serious challenges for wrist-based heart rate sensors, since there are going to be a lot of wrist flexion and a lot of movement. And although this isn't spot on, this is on the better side of things for wrist-based heart rate sensor for mountain biking. On this next ride, it came up about 2/3 of a mile short on total distance, and then you may have already noticed from the map on the Charge 4 that there's some interesting stuff going on right here. Taking a look at the GPS tracks in more detail, we can see that the Charge 4 lost GPS reception for a good amount of the ride, where it lost it in this straight section and then totally lost it on these curves over here. And then for one more mountain bike example, on this ride, the Charge 4 came up about 4 miles short, but you can see pretty clearly how it lost GPS. Comparing the GPS tracks, you can see that it lost GPS for a while on at least 2 occasions, resulting in that loss of distance. So as you can tell, I'm not exactly impressed with the built-in GPS in the Charge 4. However, the connected GPS with my phone seemed to work out just fine, but it's not really the point of the Charge 4, since the Charge 4's biggest selling point over the Charge 3 is built-in GPS. And then for heart rate, I kind of saw a pattern where it started out pretty good and then started to trail off a bit. With that, how does the Charge 4 work for indoor activities? Weight training is going to be very much similar to mountain biking, where there's a lot of wrist flexion and arm movement, and nearly all wrist-based heart rate sensors struggle in this department. And what you can see here is that there's a mix of some good and some bad, where there were some points where it was okay and then others where it wasn't. You can see from this little video clip that it takes the Charge 4 a little bit to catch up to a rapid rise in heart rate, but there were definitely times where it was closer. For swimming, the Charge 4 offers a pool swimming workout where it'll provide you with the time, pace, calories, distance, and lengths. The Charge 4 has automatic lap detection, so the distance and lengths you see here are all tracked automatically. And if we compare the numbers with two other devices, one using automatic lap detection and the other where I was manually tracking laps, the Charge 4 was close but did miss one lap somewhere during the session. Note that the Charge 4 data is in yards, but the other two devices show meters, but there's a conversion on the screen. Also, the calorie calculation will only be estimated since it doesn't track heart rate in the water, and that's why there's going to be a big difference there. So those are the results using the built-in workout profiles, but the Charge 4 also has automatic workout detection just like the Charge 3. And it's designed to be able to recognize walking, running, biking, elliptical, swimming, a generic workout called Sport, which they say is for stuff like tennis, basketball, and soccer. And then there's going to be another one called Aerobic Workout, which is designed to recognize stuff like Zumba or a hip hop class. With any of these, you have to be doing the activity for at least 10 minutes before it'll start to recognize and register that you are working out. But you can set this threshold higher than 10 minutes if you'd like. And if for some reason you don't want the Charge 4 to try to recognize any of these activities, you have the option of just turning it off. For running, it was pretty much spot on with the time I started running and tracked for about a minute longer than the other devices that I manually started and stopped. But do notice that there isn't a map of the run as the automatic tracking doesn't appear to turn GPS on. However, it still will track your heart rate. For cycling, the Charge 4 will recognize when you're riding on pavement, and again, it's pretty darn accurate in terms of recognizing when you start riding and was just a smidge over in total time. For swimming, it tracked just a bit over for the total time, and then it came up about 25 meters and one length short of the actual swim. And it's interesting because the Charge 3 tracked heart rate in the water if you were relying on the automatic swim detection and not using the actual swimming workout profile, and this doesn't seem to be the case with the Charge 4 as I didn't see any heart rate collected. And then time spent on the elliptical will also be automatically tracked, and those were some pretty solid results, and then the same thing can be said for walking. Lastly, let's go over battery life. Fitbit advertises that you should be able to get about 5 hours of continuous GPS usage out of it, and I found that to be pretty spot on. And what was interesting is that I didn't see that much of a difference using it with connected GPS versus the built-in GPS. And then in terms of how often I would have to recharge it, it's going to depend on how many times you actually use it for recording outdoor activities, but I was getting on average about 4 to 6 days out of it. So to wrap things up, I was expecting a bit more out of the Charge 4. I definitely take into consideration that Charge 4 is a more budget-friendly activity tracker, and I don't expect it to perform like a $1,000 device or even a $400 device, but some of those GPS results weren't all that great. And then there was an interesting pattern with heart rate where the higher intensity activities, they didn't do all that well, but the lower intensity activities, those seemed to work a lot better. With that, if you're looking for a small, attractive activity tracker that has really good sleep tracking and you don't mind bringing your phone with you when you work out outdoors, honestly, I'd recommend just getting the Charge 3, which is substantially cheaper and is still available today. And if you are looking to leave your phone at home, then I'll have some recommendation, which I'll leave down in the description below. Anyhow, if you liked the video, please hit that like button down below and also subscribe to the channel for plenty more sports tech videos that are coming soon. In the meantime, have fun, stay safe out there, and we will see you in the next video.